So today I'm joined by Head of Client Development for Display UK, Jess Stedman. Jess, tell us a bit about Display UK.
Hi Phil. So yeah, Display as a business operates across the UK and Europe. In terms of the UK, we have 3 manufacturing sites, 1 in Dublin and 2 in England. And that gives us flexibility of supply, obviously, between the 3 sites. The business has brought together, if you like, the practicality of production, display production, and the innovation and the flair of creative services, which allows us to be really innovative in terms of our how we approach display and how we approach retail in the UK market and obviously Europe.
You mentioned there sort of the production side of the business. The last few years, there's undoubtedly been a lot of challenges, but let's just pick up on one of those, which is raw materials and the cost and supply of raw materials. How have you managed that?
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, as I'm sure many companies, many people have felt over the last 3 years, and you really couldn't write the context of what's happened over the last 3 years and the number of situations and challenges that we faced. But it's definitely been a volatile market. It's been hard to predict. And yes, one of the challenges that the industry has faced is that control of material and price. One of the benefits of Display is that we're very fortunate to be part of Smurfit Kappa, which means that we're completely integrated and we have control over our core material, which is ultimately paper. So we control everything from the start of the process, so the forestry, right the way through paper making, board, display, boxes, whatever the end material might be, and then into our recycling arm, which then can bring obviously all of the waste materials at the end of the life cycle back into our process. So that gives us consistency of supply, and it also gives us control over that process, which I know obviously a few and far between in the current climate.
So Jess, you talked there about raw materials, production process and end of life, which is a really nice link into the most important topic that we've faced certainly in the last decade as an industry, and that's sustainability. How are you guys working in this area?
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic, and it's certainly an area that we're recognising people are more conscious of making the correct decision, making those sustainable decisions and moving away from plastic alternatives or whatever the alternative option is. And it's interesting because the amount of times that we will be working on a project and we'll produce a sample and we'll have people saying to us, don't bring a sample in, save the tree. And it is an interesting one because ultimately the fact that we have control of the forestry, we obviously understand how this material starts off. So when we plant a tree or when we take down a tree, for instance, the bulk of the tree ultimately goes elsewhere. The parts of the tree that go into the paper making process are the twigs, the bits that aren't going to have a use anywhere else, almost like the kindling for those people who have a fire.
Sure.
It's those bits of the tree that go into that paper making process, and ultimately as a sample, whatever it might be, a box or a display, that material can go through the supply chain up to 7 times before it needs more virgin fibre adding back into the process, which makes it a really sustainable product for moving forward with. And we're definitely seeing a shift. I mean, sustainability, as you mentioned, has been a topic for a number of years, but certainly recently, post-pandemic, we're seeing a direct shift towards that real accountability and social responsibility around the materials that companies and individuals even are using.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a real demand, a real drive all of a sudden again, whereas obviously for understandable reasons the foot got taken off the brake a little bit over the last few years. But yeah, and the cynical part of me might say it might have something to do with the plastic taxes that are coming down the chain, but yeah, we're definitely seeing a drive towards corrugated solutions, whether that be display or box materials.
Well, Jess, it certainly sounds like Display are in a pretty unique position in the industry to take into account the raw materials, the flexibility of the product itself, all the way through to end of life. And that 7 times use is a really interesting stat.
Yeah.
So thank you for spending time with us today.
Okay.
and we look forward to seeing you at our events going forwards.